Hi guys, so this is our second video in our AP Environmental Science playlist, and this is going to be covering topic 1.2, which is terrestrial biomes. So let's recap, what is a biome? So a biome is a region that has a unique and specific set of plants and animals along with a consistent climate. So remember that those organisms in that biome are uniquely adapted for that biome. And maybe if you need an example for a biome, one example of a biome, and we'll go with the terrestrial one this time since that's our topic, would be a desert. Remember, terrestrial means land-based. So you see those cactus, that cactus is an example of a organism uniquely adapted to the desert, and we'll go more into that later. And off to the side, I have what is an oak tree, and you're going to know that as a deciduous tree. And later on, you'll figure out what a deciduous tree means in terms of biomes. So first, what's really important to know is what is latitude? So latitude is a distance from the equator. We'll go into what the equator is if you're not sure that is right now. But what this really matters in is because that distance from the equator helps us identify what type of biome we think will be there. It'll help us predict that biome. And the reason why we can do that is because biomes exist in a predictable pattern. Now, how we're doing that? We're doing that because the latitude can affect the temperature and precipitation patterns. So by measuring them, we can guess what biome there is. So off to the left, we have a Earth, right? An Earth icon with a bunch of lines going from left to right. Those lines are what your latitude is. We'll go over the important parts later, but right now all you need to know is that's what your latitude is when they're talking about it. And then off to the right, we have this really cool graphic I found. It's a temperature and humidity graph showing how we can use the latitude to guess what type of biome it'll be. So, yep, you can just see over there, the y-axis is precipitation with the x-axis is temperature. And we're using that to estimate what type of biome we think it'll be. Okay, so here's my visual for you guys. This is a really great graphic as well. It's showing you all the different biomes and where they're found, but we're going to mainly be looking at the latitude for this part. So the equator is that 0 latitude line. That is where all of your latitudes, like 30 latitude, 60 degrees latitude, those are your distances from the equator, is how you're getting that value. But what you need to know is your equator lies directly near some tropical forests. So all of your area from 0 degrees latitude to 30 degrees latitude will be mostly tropical. And we can see that working. We have what? Amazon rainforest in there. We have Indonesia, India, parts of Africa. All the tropical regions are located in that area. Okay, well, I should have said all, but a good most of them. Next, from our 30 degrees latitude to 60-degree latitudes, this is where you're going to find your temperate biomes. So your temperate biomes are going to be found in this area. So we can look at the bottom and we can check, and we're seeing a lot of temperate grassland and temperate forest in this area, which makes sense. It's matching up with what we have. Lastly, 60 degrees latitude and above is where you'll usually find stuff like the tundra and boreal forests. So tundra and boreals biomes are a lot colder, so you're going to see them towards the top. And notice that some of the things like mountains can be scattered throughout. So remember that not all biomes follow this pattern, but this is a really good predictable way to use. Okay, so going to start from the top and we're going to go towards the bottom. So let's start with what is the tundra? So the tundra is going to be the very, very, very top of our graph. It was where, like, right beneath the polar ice. So our tundra is marked by extremely cold temperatures and very low precipitation. So you're getting less than 10 inches of rain each year. Because of this lack of resources, we're going to be seeing a lot of low growing plants like mosses, lichens, and grasses. A lot of the bigger growing plants won't be able to survive. And another reason why they won't be able to survive is what permafrost. And permafrost is really what you should take away from this section, is that the tundra has permafrost, which is a layer of soil that's permanently frozen. So that's also another reason why you're only going to find low-growing plants, because the bigger the plant, usually the bigger the roots, and you aren't going to be able to go that deep without getting your roots frozen, I guess. So the climate is off to the left. We can see it's very cold. And just one common example to know about animals that live in the tundra is a moose. Okay, let's go over the taiga and boreal forest. So we're still above that 60-degree latitude line. So this is towards the top, but it's right beneath the tundra. And this area, I mean, it's still going to have cold temperatures, but it's a bit better when it comes to precipitation. You're going to get a lot more precipitation per year, but much of it's as snow. And then you're going to want to remember the types of trees for this area when we go to our next biome. But this area has coniferous trees. So coniferous trees are your spruces, your fir, and your pine trees. And what you need to know about these trees is that they don't lose their leaves and fall down during fall or autumn. These are evergreen trees. And then lastly, we need to know that there's thin acidic soil. Because we're not having all these leaves fall to the ground, they're not getting recycled into the soil, we have fewer nutrients in there. So like we have pine trees and it's an example off to the left and then just the cool temperature on the right. Okay, let's go into what the temperate forest is. So the temperate forest, remember, was from 30 degrees latitude to 60-degree latitude. That was our temperate area. And this is kind of like your ideal dream area, if that makes sense. This place has the perfect moderate climate. You have all four seasons, which is important to know. You have your spring, summer, fall, and winter. Up until now, we were only having summer and winter, and the summer was being a lot shorter than the winter. Another thing to note is that this area has high precipitation. You have lots of inches of rain annually, 30 to 60. I don't think that's as important to remember as much as it is that it's high precipitation. And what you need to know is this area, if you remember, is what the deciduous trees are from. These are trees such as oak, maple, and beech. And I'd say the easiest way to remember is that these trees lose their leaves in the fall, they turn all those pretty colors, and then they fall down. Because those leaves are falling down, not like the taiga or the boreal forest, we're actually getting these nutrients back into the soil, which is being recycled and creating more fertile soil. So we have good soil and then oak and maple trees. Okay, let's go over the chaparral. So you're gonna hear this under lots of names. There's chaparral, shrublands. What you need to know about this area is that it has hot and dry summers. But your winters, rather than being cold, are going to be a lot milder and wet. Your winter is when you're going to get most of your precipitation. And another important thing to know is that in these areas, a lot of the plants have fire adaptations. Due to theirs being so hot and dry for such a long part of the year, the plants have to be adapted to frequent wildfires. So you're going to see a lot of shrubby vegetation. It's not as bad as the tundra where it's a bunch of smaller plants, but you're not going to see a big, grand, majestic tree. You're going to see some shrubs, small trees, and mainly drought-resistant plants. Okay, now let's go into the tropical rainforest. We're getting to that 0 to 30 degree mark now. Latitude. Tropical rainforest, you need to know is these are the warm temperatures, but it's warm year round. So this is where you're kind of like getting out of the seasons. This is more of a year round, it's always going to be warm. And this is the highest precipitation of all the biomes. It's super high, you get 80 to 100 inches of rain annually and you have dense vegetation. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen any of the pictures from the Amazon, but those are really tall trees and they're just covering the entire top. And it's like a canopy structure, and a lot of the sunlight isn't able to go down. And there's also high biodiversity. It is by far one of the most diverse ecosystems on Earth. But what might surprise you is that this is actually a very nutrient poor region. And the reason why is all this high precipitation and then this dense vegetation covering up the sunlight means that there's not a lot of nutrients generated or energy recycled through the sunlight. And the little that is often getting swept away by the tons of precipitation. So even though it's high biodiversity and it has lots of vegetation, lots of animals, it is also nutrient poor soil. So whenever you're thinking about it, don't always think about it as if you have lots of biodiversity, it's going to be nutrient rich, because that does not apply to the tropical rainforest. So, yeah, let's go on. Now we're at our savanna. If you don't know what the savanna is, the best way I describe it is like, if you've seen those nature documentaries, like right beneath the desert in like the Sahara Desert, there's a bunch of that's like kind of like yellow grass, big trees, like that's like kind of what the savanna area is. So similarly to the tropical rainforest area, this has warm climate year round. It's just really warm. It's not as bad as a tropical rainforest, but it's still pretty warm. And instead of having like no seasons in a sense, it has seasonal rainfall. So this is where you're gonna have your wet season and your dry season instead of all four seasons. And this landscape is really just a bunch of grasses with your scattered trees every now and then. And kind of like our chaparral, we're gonna have lots of fires, frequent fires. And since it's mostly grass dominated, we have lots of grazing animals in this ecosystem. So that's why I have the little picture of the cow. Okay, lastly, let's go over deserts. So deserts have the lowest precipitation. These receive less than 10 inches of rain per year. But what you also need to remember is that, I'm sure most of you guys know this by now, but the Antarctica is also considered a desert, even though that's completely different when it comes to our latitudes. But the reason you identify deserts from their precipitation range. So very low precipitation, you get basically none. So Antarctica, it's the same deal. It's not raining, it's not snowing as much either. So remember, with deserts, these are where you're going mainly off of precipitation. Now, deserts have extreme temperatures. If we're talking in the sense of most of deserts you guys are thinking of, like the Sahara, we're going to be talking about very hot days and cold nights. So that's kind of like where our cactus comes in. Well, I guess it comes later. So let's actually finish talking first. So you're going to have lots of sparse vegetation. So plants like cacti and your drought-resistant shrubs are going to mainly be the only plants there. Not a lot is able to survive due to extreme temperature changes and low amount of water. Because of this low amount of water, we're going to see a lot of water conservation adaptations. Plants and animals are adapted to store and conserve water. So our cactus comes in. A really great example you should know is waxy, like cactuses. I don't know, is it skin? I know their outer membrane is really waxy, and where that comes in is that it doesn't let a lot of water come out and get what do you call it? Evaporate. It doesn't let a lot of water evaporate. So that's kind of like what you're thinking when you're thinking about water conservation for the desert. Okay, and then this is where you need to talk about. So biome shifting, what we need to talk about is that as climate changes, your biomes change. Remember, a biome is defined by a specific climate. So if that climate changes, the entire biome does as well. So whenever you're like kind of like your trends that you're going to see is whenever the temperature changes, so warmer temperatures push ecosystems towards cooler regions. So if it's getting warmer in the middle, then the top is going to be cooler compared to it. So it used to be in the middle is going to move up to the top. I don't know if that made sense, but hopefully that did. And the ecosystem impact of this is that species have to adapt, move, or unfortunately die out as their habitat changes. Okay, thank you guys so much for watching this video. There should be more coming soon. If you guys don't know, I'm part of FRC and we have our comp soon, so haven't been able to release as much as I like. But I have lots of slides prepared for you, and hopefully we're gonna get to release our next video soon. Okay, please leave a comment. I don't know, I sound like a YouTuber now, but drop a like, share, subscribe. Yeah, that's kind of it. Okay, thank you. Bye.